Every club has overspent on a footballer once upon a time, and there are some teams who have done it more than once. A waste of money doesn't have to mean the most expensive player. If PSG were to sign me for £1 million, then it would be a waste of money, even if they can splash £200 million on Neymar. It's relevant to how well they've done, how good they were before, and then the fee that was spent. So let's go through every Premier League team and pick out their biggest ever waste of money. Arsenal, Francis Jeffers. Way back in 2001, Arsenal spent an initial £8 million on a 20-year-old forward named Francis Jeffers, with the fee potentially rising to £10 million. While this might sound like buttons nowadays, it was still a fair wedge of cash 17 years ago. Jeffers had been getting amongst the goals at Everton as a teenager, which caught the eye of Arsene Wenger, who brought the young forward to Highbury. Sadly though, it didn't happen in red for Jeffers, who scored 4 goals in 22 Premier League outings before leaving the club permanently in 2004. Looking back at his career, his time with Everton were his best days, showing just how poorly he did post-Arsenal, which makes the fee they paid a huge waste of money. Bournemouth Max Gradel. The Cherries have only just started flashing the cash in relative terms since they became a Premier League club, so chances to waste money have been limited, but they still did it when they signed Max Gradel for £7 million in 2015, ahead of their first ever Premier League campaign. Gradel was supposed to add some flair and creativity to Eddie Howe's side, but was immediately struck down by injury, which effectively ruined the winger's career at Dean Court. Bournemouth got nothing for their money, and Gradel is now at Toulouse. As for Bournemouth, they might have wasted their money, but at least they've got money to waste now, I suppose. Brighton, Jurgen Locadia. This one is very harsh, I know, as the Dutch forward only moved to the Amex in January, but to be honest, Brighton have splashed the cash even less than Bournemouth, another team that has only really been able to spend big money since entering the Premier League. Locadia cost the Seagulls £15 million from PSV Eindhoven, adding some extra firepower to Chris Hughton's squad, but so far he's not been firing in the Premier League, with Glenn Murray flying the goal-scoring flag in blue and white. Yes, we know this is harsh, and I hope Locadia isn't considered a waste of money by the end of the season, but we had to pick someone. We said every Premier League team. Burnley, Nahki Wells. I feel like every time I mention Burnley in one of these videos, the answer is always Nahki Wells. He's clearly the man for every occasion. The Clarets brought in the striker for £5 million from Huddersfield Town last summer, and even before the ink was dry, it didn't look like he was a Sean Dyche kind of player. 10 appearances later, and it was clear that this was indeed the case. Wells didn't fit in at Turf Moor and left this summer on loan at QPR. While £5 million doesn't sound like a lot of money, it is to someone like Burnley, who just like previous clubs aren't the richest around. Cardiff City, Andreas Cornelius. Last time Cardiff were in the Premier League, they didn't last long, and one of the reasons was that their marquee striker signing didn't really work out. Danish forward Andreas Cornelius moved to Wales from Copenhagen for £8 million, but was struck down by injury early on. Shortly after he returned, the forward was injured yet again, and by the time January came around, he was back at Copenhagen, while the then Red of Cardiff plummeted back towards the Championship. On a positive note, Cardiff did basically get their money back on him, so it wasn't a total waste of money in the long run at least. Here's hoping the same doesn't happen to Bobby Reid. I nearly said Bobby Roode there, he's from a totally different field. Chelsea, Danny Drinkwater. With the money Chelsea have spent since Roman Abramovich took over, we were spoiled for choice here. The obvious one would be Danny Drinkwater, but there were a fair few other options that I did consider. Andrei Shevchenko's big money move didn't work out, but he was certainly worth the fee at the time, while Fernando Torres was worth every penny after that goal against Barcelona. You could even argue that Mo Salah was a waste of money at £11 million, while the same can be said for £23 million Juan Cuadrado. But instead we've got Danny Drinkwater, who cost an obscene £35 million. Now he was brilliant during Leicester's title-winning campaign, but that was literally it. And he was only brought in as a backup for Conte after Matic was sold. Now Drinkwater is even further down the pecking order at Stamford Bridge, making him a huge waste of money by the Blues. Crystal Palace, Jairo Riedewald. As soon as Frank de Boer got the sack, this deal became a waste of money, so after 4 games of last season basically. Riedewald was a very Frank de Boer signing, a defender who could play out from the back and start the attack, costing £7.9 million from Ajax. He had a rough start in the Premier League, but never really got a chance again once de Boer got the boot. The Dutchman is surprisingly still at the club, but has to be considered a waste of money by the Palace hierarchy. But they'll not be bothered as long as they remain in the Premier League. Everton, Yannick Bolasie. I will beat this drum for as long as I live. Why on earth did Everton spend so much money on Yannick bloody Bolasie back in 2016? The winger cost the Toffees £25 million, having impressed for Crystal Palace, where strange skill sets such as touching the grass amazed the Selhurst Park masses. But skills like that might as well be pointless if you've got no end product, which is where Balassi has struggled, making the £25 million fee laughable. He struggled in blue before a massive injury kept him out for a year, and now he's been farmed out on loan to Championship side Aston Villa, summing up his waste of money tag. Fulham, Kostas Mitroglou. The last time Fulham were in the Premier League, they signed Kostas Mitroglou for £12 million from Olympiakos, a club record fee at the time. The Greek striker was intended to propel the club to safety, but you know that didn't happen considering they'd just been promoted back to the top flight. With fitness clearly an issue, Mitroglou managed just 3 appearances for Fulham and scoring 0 goals as the Cottagers dropped into the Championship. He's had joy everywhere he's gone since then, but wasn't worth a single penny to Fulham, who sold him to Benfica in 2016 for €7 million. Huddersfield Town, Tom Ince. Plain and simple, Tom Ince is not as good as his dad was, and his dad was really good, so that's nothing to be ashamed of for young Tom. He's a very good Championship player and has proved that with Derby and Blackpool. However, stepping up to the Premier League has never quite happened for Tom Ince, who cost Huddersfield Town £8 million according to transfermarket.com. Ince scored just twice for the Terriers in the top flight as they avoided relegation, but he's already back in the Championship, with Huddersfield Town somehow getting a profit by selling him to Stoke for £10 million. So maybe he wasn't a waste of money after all. Leicester City, Islam Slimani. When the Foxes won the title, their reputation was increased, and therefore they were able to splash the cash a bit more and attract higher quality players. That's why they spent £28 million on Islam Slimani, who had been lethal in front of goal throughout his career. Sadly though, Slimani's face just didn't really fit the King Power. Sure, he was a marquee name, but his style didn't match the likes of Jamie Vardy or Shinji Okazaki, who had such a brilliant partnership for Leicester when they won the league. The Algerian is now on his second loan spell away from Leicester since joining the club, and a return of the King Power looks fairly unlikely. Liverpool, Andy Carroll. Sometimes you've just got to go with the obvious answer, which is exactly what Andy Carroll is. The lanky striker cost the Reds £35 million on deadline day, with Fernando Torres packing his bags and heading to Chelsea for £50 million. Just like Slimani, Carroll's face didn't fit at Anfield, and he didn't suit the style of football they wanted to play. He was merely an informed old-school English striker who had impressed for Newcastle. It didn't take long before he was out the door and on his way to West Ham, and Liverpool fans are just grateful they managed to sign Luis Suarez on the same day as Carroll's arrival. Manchester City, Roque Santa Cruz. When City found themselves some money, it was obvious they'd waste some of it. Rubinho was a disappointment, but he worked out for a little while. Wilfried Bony never got amongst the goals, but the price tag maybe was justified by his form at Swansea, while Eliakim Mangala was just a catastrophe. But our Man City waste of money is Roque Santa Cruz, who cost £17.5 million in 2009. While that's much less than the previously mentioned transfers, Roque Santa Cruz had no business costing nearly £20 million in 2009. The forward had had one good season with Blackburn, his first great goal tally in his career, and somehow Mark Hughes was spunking £17.5 million on him. Santa Cruz managed just 4 goals for City before leaving on loan and then permanently, while Mark Hughes was never given a big job ever again, and City went on to buy Sergio Aguero, so it all worked out in the end really. Manchester United, Juan Sebastian Veron. Once the most expensive signing in English football, Juan Sebastian Veron cost the Red Devils £24 million from Lazio, arriving in 2001. The Argentinian immediately said he was not scared of the Premier League, but maybe he should have been in hindsight. Despite a fine start, there was no consistency from Veron, who went on to struggle in England, much to the anger of Sir Alex Ferguson, who would berate anyone that criticised his record signing. Veron would blame the lack of intensity in pre-season for his fitness issues, and would join Chelsea in 2003. Newcastle United, Florian Thauvin. If things had gone a little differently, Newcastle United might have a World Cup winner at their disposal right now. But no, they sold off Florian Thauvin soon after signing him, and now he's got a World Cup winners medal after making it to Russia for his performances back at Marseille. In the summer of 2015, Steve McLaren's Newcastle paid the Ligue 1 club £15 million for Thauvin, who had been one of France's highest rated talents. At St James's Park though, Thauvin looked weak for the Premier League immediately, and chances to wear black and white were few and far between. And before he could even get himself settled, Thauvin was off back to France, and Newcastle fans will have to wonder what might have been for a player who was kicked on ever since leaving the North East. If only he'd never worn that bloody tuxedo. Southampton, Guido Carrillo. A signing from January just gone, Guido Carrillo was not the answer to Southampton's problems, and if they had found the answer, the relegation battle might not have been as nervy as it was. The Saints needed goals, so turned to Monaco's Guido Carrillo and forked up £19 million for a striker who had 15 goals in 65 Ligue 1 outings. I mean, the writing should have been on the wall immediately. Unsurprisingly, Carrillo wasn't the source of goals Southampton needed, scoring 0 before being loaned out to Leganes this summer. Fortunately for Southampton, their blunder didn't end up with them in the Championship. Tottenham Moussa Sissoko. For a big club that doesn't tend to spend too much money, where on earth did the idea of spending £30 million on Moussa Sissoko come from? The midfielder had been fairly woeful for Newcastle, despite some flashes of sublime talent early on in his time in the Premier League. But a couple of good showings at Euro 2016 somehow convinced Tottenham to splash out on deadline day, and 2 years on, it's hard to say what Sissoko brought to the Spurs party. He's not a workhorse, he's not a crafty player on the ball, and he's not a consistent goal scorer. He has no qualities that make you think he's a Maurizio Pochettino player. If Moussa Sissoko is the kind of player that Daniel Levy wants to sign, it's probably a good thing they didn't sign anyone this summer. Watford, Isaac's success. A success he was not. Isaac's success cost Watford a club record £12.5 million 2 years ago from Granada, 2 weeks after the Watford owners sold the Spanish club. Success has so far managed just 1 goal for the Hornets, not a pretty sight for a team who rarely spend more than £10 million on a player. Success is still with the club, but he's hardly been involved in success on the pitch for Javi Grazia's side. How many more times can I say success? Success, 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 success. West Ham United, Savio and Serrigo. Now who remembers this geezer? The Hammers spent £9 million on the forward, who arrived from Brescia in 2009 and was immediately awarded with the number 10 shirt. That would be the exact number of Premier League appearances he would make for the Hammers, and he would head to Fiorentina not long after arriving. Since then, Serrigo has played in every country imaginable. Now aged just 29, his last known club were Varia, who compete in Bulgaria. Wolves, Roger Johnson. Now that Wolves have got some money behind them, we'll surely see some wastes of money in the coming years, but for now, options are limited. We've gone with the relegator Roger Johnson, who Wolves paid Birmingham City £4 million for following the Blues' demotion to the Championship. Johnson would soon join them there before dropping down even further, playing his part in back-to-back relegations for Wolves. It might have just been £4 million, but Wolves got absolutely zero worth out of a player who apparently turned up to training drunk while he was captain of the club. Oh, how things have changed. So that's every Premier League club's biggest waste of money. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.